Hey guys, long time no see. I know I always say this every time I record seemingly these days, but it's been a little while. I've been busy, lots of stuff going on. You may or may not have heard about some of it. It relates to GP Vegas. It's a long story, and I'm not going to get into it on my Commander videos. I did do a podcast today actually with Brian Malinakis about what happened there, and if you have any interest in that, his podcast is called All Things Considered, and I think that the full conversation will be going up in a couple of days, a day or two away. But I'm not going to focus on that. It's too feel bad to even think about. Instead, let's have some fun with Commander videos. I started playing again recently, and starting with Nin, and then moving off into a deck I have not used in ages, my old Zur deck, which honestly feels pretty much too rude to play most of the time. I think that when I play games with it, I need to post in the comments that with a caveat that the deck is hyper competitive, very 1v1 oriented, so that my opponents know what they're getting into when they come and join the game. The consequence of that may be that I never get anybody to actually join the game in the first place. It's hard enough to get regular opponents, and I think that if they know that they're running up against a deck like Zur, they would be even more reluctant to play. But yeah, I haven't really had any great games with that deck yet, because it's just, with the improvements that I made to it, the games are just so absurdly lopsided. It's like we're playing two different formats. But as always, if you are interested in my deck list for my current Zur deck, you are welcome to email me for it. Anyway, without further ado, let's kick this game off, which I played back at the very tail end of August. I think this was played like August 28th or 29th. And I'm up against the Skeleton. You notice that the timers are now an hour, which is kind of nice because it makes it so that you are much less likely to run out of time in the Commander matches, which does happen pretty frequently. And he is playing with Wort the Raidmother. Certainly when I see this red-green creature that costs 6, I know that my opponent is likely playing a more casual deck, and I prepare to feel some guilt for playing Nin. But you never really know what's going to happen, and this is one of those examples where you have a totally unplayable draw, and no matter how strong your deck is, if you have to mulligan or once or twice or 3 times, you can often be at a big deficit to a deck that may not necessarily be as 1v1 oriented or as competitive. So we'll see how this goes. I'm going to mulligan, obviously, this unplayable hand into this even more unplayable hand. It's a lot of the same cards, actually. Unfortunately, not even one land to go with this beautiful Mox Diamond, so I'm going to go down to a new hand of 7, which would obviously ultimately go to 5. This hand, totally horrible. Keeping with the consistent theme of 7-card hands you would never, ever, ever want to keep. So yeah, triple mulligan. Seems good. If anything's going to level the playing field a little bit with him playing Wort, it's going to be a triple mulligan. And yeah, this hand also totally unkeepable. But I think about it and I look at it and I'm thinking, well, it looks extremely bad. But with just 1 more mana, I have the ability to Rolling Earthquake potentially. Although I may have to put this card on the bottom. I do have Condescend, which allows me to scry, and I do have Fire Ice, which allows me to also tap a land or kill early mana birds. So if I can just draw 1 mana, I have a reasonable shot at staying in the game. And I kind of feel like, even though this is a 1-land hand, going down to 3 cards after the mulligan, pretty bad. So I like to keep this, and I'm fully prepared to just kind of pack it in if I don't draw land in a couple turns, because sometimes those games happen. So here we go. Going first with a 4-card hand against red-green. I'm going to try to move the mouse away again so it's not too clicky. My apologies if the mic is picking up a lot of clickiness. All right, turn 1 forest. Not too bad. He does not have a fast beginning, which means I've got some time. Awesome. Right off the top is mana number 2. I didn't manage to do that with 3 7-card hands, and yet I've managed to do it with this final one. And I'm not going to tap down his forest during his upkeep, because if he does top deck something like Soul Ring, I want to be able to Condescend it. And that's fine. And I draw Expedition Map. Can't play it yet. And this turn, of course, because I can't really Condescend anything impactful that does cost 1, I decide to just tap down his forest during upkeep. This is also a way to cycle the Fire Ice to get myself to potentially another land. Since he didn't do anything last turn, I expect that he probably won't have anything to play off of 2 land on this upcoming turn unless he drew something he does have a good mana source, and he's got a Bird's Paradise, so I guess he certainly had the Taiga in hand, and he must have just drawn the bird. But I wouldn't have been able to condescend that anyway, so no big deal. And I probably would not have cast Fire Ice on it either, because it's more important to just cycle to draw a card to get mana. All right, I'm trying Force of Negation. This is a recent addition to the Nin deck. Obviously, the card was just printed. And yeah, just totally amazing. This card replaced Pact of Negation, which used to be in the deck, and wasn't really particularly happy with Pact. It was one of those cards that I felt was a necessary evil, in that sometimes you just need to be able to interact when you're tapped out. But Force of Negation, I mean, how often am I really going to be counterspelling creatures with this deck? It's almost never, because nearly all of the problem creatures are things like uncounterable, and yeah, the fact that Force of Negation is much easier to hardcast and doesn't require you to spend 5 mana on your next turn means that it is considerably better in most situations. So I really love the card in the deck. I'm not going to play Nin yet here. I'm just going to play Expedition Map and keep Condescend available in case he does have a 4 or 5 mana play. And he casts Cultivate. Obviously, no ability, no temptation to Force a Negation this. I'm just going to have to deal with what comes afterward. Having the Rolling Earthquake is nice, actually, because it's going to provide me with insurance to deal with Wort, the bird, and all the buddies, should that happen in the next couple turns. So I'm going to sack the Expedition Map. You can get a quick look at the deck here. Other additions recently, I don't know if I've touched on these. Obviously, Archmage's Charm is amazing in this deck. You just can't have enough theft effects against Sol Ring and Mana Crypt, and occasionally it does things like steal Bird's Paradise. I'm not running the Narset yet in here. I do have Urza in here as well. And the reason why I'm not using Narset is because the deck is so low on creatures, it's really, really hard to protect Narset and to keep the ability static. That said, if you do get Narset in play, it makes Nin insane, because not only can you shoot your own creatures to draw cards, but you can shoot their guys with Nin, blow them up, and they draw nothing due to Narset's ability. Although that is risky, because if they are able to kill Narset in response, you might wind up letting them draw a bunch of cards. But in theory, that interaction seems very, very strong, and maybe something I look into. I'm not remotely convinced that Narset doesn't belong in the deck, but it is a challenge to find room for it, or really for any extra cards for that matter. I'm just going to go get Ancient Tomb here. All right, Tomb comes down. I draw a very, very useless Mox Opal with no other artifacts, and now it's time to play Nin, since I have the ability to Condescend for 2. And this is nice, because if he does have, in fact, play Wort on the following turn, I have the ability to stop it. I see him tap 6 mana and think Wort's coming, and instead he casts Mana Reflection. And since this card doubles all of his mana, including the Birds of Paradise, and will ramp him up immediately to whatever this is, like 14 mana, that pretty much negates Condescend for the rest of the game. So this is the turn to do it. Card's just nasty anyway. Any type of Mana Flare effects pretty much always need to be stopped, because they are completely anti-containment. And that's what this Nin deck is all about. So I'm going to counter and scry 2. And I see Brainstorm and Dissolve on top, and both of those, of course, go back on top of the deck, because they're both very good. There's Brainstorm. I'm just decided to Brainstorm right here. I know what's on top. I know Dissolve is there, but I really am hoping to just hit another land drop. And sure enough, I get both Reliquary Tower and Talisman of Creativity, which is really, really nice. And I do make a mistake here, in my opinion, because Dissolve has Scry, and if I'm going to be casting Dissolve on the following turn, well, this Mox Opal is not totally useless now that I've drawn a second artifact, but is still a brick, and I think Rolling Earthquake has a lot of value, but I should have put Rolling Earthquake 1 card down and put Mox Opal on top, so that if I did Dissolve, I could Scry it away. I mean, I guess it's a bit of a judgment call, because by putting Mox Opal and then Rolling Earthquake, if I do in fact have to Dissolve, then, or I don't have to Dissolve next turn, and instead I just draw the Rolling Earthquake, then I can Dissolve the following turn to get past the Mox. But it's a bit of a judgment call, and I ultimately felt that it was wrong to play them, to put them back in the order that I did. I'm just going to play the Talisman of Creativity and hang out. Down comes Wort, Raidmother, and of course I do want to counter that, because I'm not ready to use the Rolling Earthquake. I'd rather he invest more mana in Wort before I do that. And there's Rolling Earthquake, which I now, of course, sheepishly put right back on top. And now I know I'm going to draw that dumb Mox Opal. That said, I have ramped up now to a 5-card Nin activation already. And I gave some thought to just tapping out to do it right now. ultimately decided I wanted to keep my mana untapped because there's a reasonable chance. A lot of the time you'll see these people playing red-green. They will go after your commander and try to kill it. And you can draw cards in response. So by preempting that and tapping the creature in advance, you remove the opportunity for them to do that. Of course, there's also a risk in that he kills it in response to me drawing cards, but it's not that hard to recast, so not the end of the world. And he casts Sylvan Library. And I think about countering this. In retrospect, I think I probably should have just drawn cards in response because I'd use Force of Negation to stop it. But I didn't, and kind of regretted it right away. He's tapping some more mana here. He casts Harmonize. All right, so now I'm going to draw cards in response. Having not done that to the Sylvan. Drawing 5. And I get a bunch of blue cards to go with it. And I ultimately decide that there's probably bigger things to fight over, and I'd rather keep the Force of Negation around to stop something more devastating now that he has so much mana. And he casts Goblin Bombardment, and this is the exact kind of card that Force of Negation was built to stop. I'm very, very glad I didn't take either of those bait spells, because if Bombardment is out, as long as he has a single creature in play, I can never, ever get a Nin activation off, and that is one of the ways that this deck can completely fail. So I draw Prismatic Vista. That's another new addition. And I'm going to recast Nin. 3 blue mana untapped to be able to use Archmage's Charm. And I have the ability to go into the Royal with Kicker if he, in fact, targets Nin with removal. So he takes 4 damage. And he plays Kerkeep. Down comes Mana Vault. I'm fully expecting him to just run Wort out again, which he does. And I'm going to just counter it with Archmage's Charm. I'm just going to try to make this commander cost as much as possible. And the fact that he used Mana Vault to put it into play means that he's going to have an even harder time casting it next turn. He casts Clan Defiance for 2, which wipes out Nin. But fortunately, she is very cheap to replay still. Only 6. I draw a Rift, which is looking pretty bad right now. Not feeling very good about this game right now. I am down to 11 already because I've had to tap the Ancient Tomb so many times. And he's got Sylvan running, and he's got 26 life. And 3 cards in hand, which means that he can draw all the way back up to 6. And, yeah, I need to get a big Nin activation off here. I'm going to lose. This is absolutely the reason why I counterspelled the Goblin Bombardment earlier, because imagine trying to work my way around the card with his ability to, like, generate tokens off Kerkeep, for example. It's just a nightmarish scenario. Without the commander just running over time, you often just fall behind against any type of green deck that draws some card advantage engine, like the Sylvan. You just can't keep up. So he plays Kessig Wolfrun, which is really interesting. And obviously it's going to put a lot of pressure on my life total, given that I'm at 11. He just passes here. I'm going to sack the Vista and go get another island. All right, well, Nin is active again. I can play another island here. But I'm at 11, and he's got a crap load of mana in play, including Mana Vault. So this Kessig Wolfrun, costing red, green, and X. What is this? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He can hit me for 10 extra damage off of it, which makes pretty much any of his creatures lethal. That is going to be a challenge at 10 life to handle. And sure enough, he makes a Kobold at the end of the turn as well. So he's got an infinite stream of guys, and that allows him to sack his Sakura Trivelder to go get another land. And I'm not sure if I agree with that. I don't think that he needs another land at this point. I think that having an extra creature to pump with the Kessig Wolfrun probably makes more sense. So I think that may have been maybe he really wants to reshuffle with the Sylvan, but I think it was probably not a particularly great judgment call to do that. All right. Well, I'm glad I've got 2 bounce spells in my hand, because that at least buys me some amount of time against this Kessig Wolfrun. And based on tempo stuff, if he gets really greedy, and he only, like, if he could attack with one of the things and use Kessig Wolfrun to deal 3 or 4 damage, and then just threaten lethal at any time after that, it puts me in a much tougher spot, because he's got all these follow-ups. It just depends on how greedy he decides to get with the Wolfrun. He plays a Reliquary Tower, a card I don't really understand why he's using. And he casts Destructive Revelry to bounce, or to kill the Talisman. And of course, I'm not going to bounce that to save it. I'm just going to let it happen. In comes a Kobold. So I can set up this play right here. And depending on how much he pumps into the Kobold, it may or may not determine whether I shoot it with Nin the Pain Artist or use one of my bounce spells. And a whole bunch of mana is getting tapped. This is, in my opinion, very greedy. I mean, he's got to know that I can just shoot his guy in response, let him draw a card, but completely time walk his whole turn. I mean, perhaps he knows that, but regardless, I decide I'm just going to bounce it with Into the Royal in response, which kills it off and allows me to draw 5 during end step. Nin's so powerful. All right, Whir, Fabricate, Baral, and Mana Leak. This was another island. That's actually quite good. I really like the Whir of Invention right now because I've got a fair number of islands in play. So I'm going to just play. And I screw up here. I should have absolutely cast Baral first because Baral makes the Fabricate cost 2, and it makes any other subsequent instance or sorceries cost 1 less as well, which means that the Baral would effectively be free. So as soon as I play the Fabricate, I'm kind of kicking myself for not playing Baral first. I'm going to play the Soul Ring. And now finally this this Mox comes down right after the Talisman's dead, so it doesn't actually do anything yet. But I have a plan for it. So during his upkeep, he untaps the Mana Vault. He's going to Sylvan again and take 4. And now the bird comes charging in. And I'm thinking, man, please just tap all your mana. I mean, I am down to 6. And it looks like it's a Kessig Wolf run for 6 on a Bird of Paradise. So silly. And in response, I have a pretty good answer. I tap my mana here and then think better of it and think if there's a way for me to do this. And I realize, no, I can't avoid taking 2. But that's fine, because I'm going to cast Whir of Invention for 3, get the Schnackles, and grab the bird in response, which is pretty delicious, actually. He just sank whatever 9 mana into his Bird of Paradise, including his Mana Vault, and I just grabbed it during the attack step. He taps 2 mana, he casts Krenko's Command. Yikes. All right, 2 additional creatures coming down, and I do not have Winnow Orb in this deck as a possible out. I've drawn Muddle, that's pretty handy. But first things first, I'm going to play Baral, and then I decide that it is time to play Nin again. Because I got to draw more cards. That's just how you beat stuff. He's still got 4 cards plus Sylvan. Alright, he's taking some... I think he untaps the vault. Or does he just take 1? Yeah, it's the Sylvan. Doesn't take any extra damage, and here they come. Alright, so I've got Baral to block 1, and I've got his Bird of Paradise to block the other one. So regardless of which one he pumps, I have some answers here. And we'll just see what he does. Tapping a bunch of mana, and it looks like he's pumping the one that's being blocked by the bird. I guess because he wants to keep some mana untapped, and he wants to be able to trample over for more, potentially. And I guess it doesn't really matter if he kills his bird, if he kills me also, because, you know, the game will be over. So I'm going to cast Rift. I actually accidentally tap an extra blue mana, despite having Baral in play. So that bounces the creature, and Baral kills off his other 1/1, and now we've solved that problem. The Wolf Run's still out, but at least I have a small reprieve. And then he's got Croson Grip, which is an odd thing to have held on to before attacking. That's weird. But, of course, I can't counter that, so away go the Shackles. Jace the Mind Sculptor. That's a pretty good card to draw right now. I'm going to put it down. And obviously I could tap the bird, unsummon the bird and prevent him from being able to use the Wolf Run, but that doesn't strike me as a particularly good long-term strategy. I do have the ability to just shoot it with Nin in response if he goes all in with the bird plan, and also drawing 3 cards, and I might draw something better. And sure enough, right off the top is Chandra Torch of Defiance. Very, very happy to see that. So I put the Rolling Earthquake back. I'm going to cast my Gilded Lotus. That finally turns on this Mox Opal, and down comes Chandra. And Chandra can burn the bird away. And now Baral has free reign to attack. And the damage actually matters. I mean, he's down to 12. That's pretty intense. And I like the fact also I have so much mana now so that even if something terrible happens and he gets too many creatures in play and I know that he's going to be able to kill me with the Wolf Run, I do have the ability to tie the game with Rolling Earthquake if need be. So I think he takes another point going to 11. Tapping a bunch. He's going to cast Wort. I keep tapping 2 mana. What am I doing? But I'm going to mana like this. This is purely a tempo play just to make sure he doesn't have a follow-up, because I know exactly what I'm going to be doing, and I really want him to be tapped out before I do it. So there's Wort and some extra guys. There's the Quake, of course. So before casting Rolling Earthquake, I'm going to transmute Muddle to go get Mana Drain, draw 3 cards, and put some artifacts back. play another land, and then attack with Baral. And I'm doing this because I'm going to be blowing up the board anyway, and I'd rather deal only 2 damage to myself versus 3. So hopefully if he blocks with Wort, I can actually only Quake for 2. It will definitely kill Baral, or I guess Baral will be dead from combat. But having 2 life versus 1 is a big deal. That's the reason why I'm sending in Baral. And he just takes the hit, of course, going to 10. And I have the ability to tie the game here, but hell, I want to play for the win, right? What's the point of playing for a tie when you're playing for nothing online? So I add 2 red mana, think for a little while, and then I decide ultimately to have Nin shoot Baral for a bunch of cards. Because there is a chance here, I guess I have drawn a land already. I was thinking if I drew into something like Treachery plus a Strip Mine, then I wouldn't actually have to, I wouldn't have to blow up the board, and killing Baral is better than killing Nin in that situation. Draw 5. I guess there is an argument that it makes Whirling Earthquake cost a little bit less, but I have plenty of mana anyway for what I want to do. So I draw 5 and get a really, really good hand, honestly. 3 more artifact mana plus counterspell and negate. And now it's time to Quake for 3 and go to 1 life against red-green. No big deal. I mean, that does kill the Ancient Tomb and makes Shivan Reef a lot worse. But there's a big difference between 1 and 0, and I have enough mana to both counterspell and mana drain. Well, I guess I can't counterspell. I can negate and mana drain, or negate and counterspell against his hand, and he has no more creatures. He goes down to 6 off of his mana vault, which he just has decided he doesn't want to untap anymore for some reason. Plays a Chrome Mox, imprinting Harvest Season. Huh. It's kind of an interesting card. I guess it's very, very good when you've got the ability to use Convoke. I don't know what other Convoke cards he has, but this card does have the potential to put a lot of land into play. Alright, tapping a bunch of stuff. What is happening here? Oh, Zendikar Resurgent. Another Mana Flare effect and an even more powerful one in that it draws extra cards. So that's a very, very good negate target. And he casts this card, Benefactor's Draught, just a cycle. An interesting card also, but I understand why he's using it because of its ability to enhance Convoke. And it's probably used in some combos. Then he casts Growing Rites of what is the card? Itlamok. Yeah, it's like the slow Gaze Cradle. Don't particularly care about that, given that he has so few creatures. And I think he actually, yeah, he revealed Myceloth. That's now in his hand. He's really low in life, though. 6 life is precipitously low, and now I actually have an opportunity to just put out a creature and kill him with it, potentially. All right, draw Remand. This is super nice. I'm going to brainstorm again. Amnesia. All right, pretty cool. I'll put back some artifacts. Play that thing. Play 2 artifacts. And recast Nin, who has made many appearances this game, now costing 8 mana. And did I forget to level up Chandra there? I feel like I did. Wow, that's pretty dumb. Easy to forget online when whether or not you've used or haven't used Planeswalkers. I wish that there was a visual aid to tell you. You have to click on them to find out whether or not you've used them, which is a little bit obnoxious because it would be nice to be able to just have the card glow or something if you haven't used it yet, so that you wouldn't have to audit your Planeswalkers the same way. I think I did forget to use Chandra there. Yeah, I mean, I clearly did, right? I didn't cast anything else, and this is 8 mana tap to cast Nin. Alright, so he plays Gamble, and with 2 cards in hand, I can't take the risk that he has some sort of, I mean, I've already seen Krosan Grip this game. It's not unlikely to have a card like Sudden Shock or maybe Urza's Rage in his deck, and it would really suck to lose the game to a card that he gambled for. Although it is pretty risky, he's only got 2 other cards in hand, but I ultimately decide I can't take the risk. So I'm not going to let him get an uncounterable thing. Now he's tapping a bunch of mana for this Myceloth that I knew he had. I'm just going to pop it back into his hand. So we'd have to use Mana Vault to recast it. And he just says go. Alright then. Coalition Relic, I know I was going to draw that. So I'll play that right now off of the workshop. And draw 3. Yeah, Mana Crypt. Not likely to be played this game. Let's put that back. Play the strip mine. I've got 2 hard counters in hand and amnesia. So I'm going to finally kill off one of the lands. And I ultimately, he has no creatures in play. So I decide I'd rather just, I can deal with the kobold just fine. And I decide that I'd rather kill off the kobold maker because there may be other ways that he can abuse it. As long as I can keep his creatures out of play, then Kessig Wolfrun doesn't even do anything, whereas this thing makes a steady stream of guys. So I decide to kill it, and he makes a guy in response. I got one more Wolfrun activation. I'm going to just use Chandra to play the Felwar Stone for free since I know it's there. All right, feeling pretty solid here. He only has 1 creature and 1 in hand, and he can't really afford to use his Sylvan anymore. So he plays this Highway land. The 0/1 is attacking. I can block here. And this, I think, is the first time in my life I've actually used the Stifle ability on Disallow. Maybe I've used it once or twice before in an Emrakul, but I certainly have never used it to stop a land activation, and that's exactly what I'm doing here, because that allows me to counter the activation and kill the kobold with my 1/1 Nin. Pretty nice, actually. So my Sloth comes down. That's not a threat. There's Mana Crypt again. So I'm just going to bounce to my Sloth. I don't really need the card advantage anyway. Now I can generate red. It's time to Amnesia. And in response, he casts Fall of the Titans. So red XX. Fall of the Titans deals X damage to each of up to 2 targets. And when he played this card on me, I read it as 2 creatures for some reason. Up to 2 creatures. And I thought, he's killing Nin in response. Well, no big deal. Let me just tap a bunch of mana here. Not worrying about that at all. And 8 seems like a right number. And he's down to 1 card in hand, and I'm thinking, yep, this game is over 100%. And look at this. Cryptic Command, Daze, Stoic Rebuttal. Daze obviously is garbage, but 3 hard counters in Rewind, Stoic Rebuttal, and Cryptic Command, plus Factor Fiction and Impulse. And I've got Reliquary Tower in play. This game's basically over, and after I draw 8, and I figure he recognizes just how hopeless the situation is being at 6, and I've got double Planeswalker and now whatever, 9 cards in hand, 10 cards in hand, that he'll scoop. And so I click through the resolution of Fall of the Titans. I see it say over here, the game is ended, and I figure he conceded. And I kind of sit up in my chair, and I look over, and I notice that my life total is 0. And that's when I realized that Fall of the Titans actually targets players too. And then I just let him kill me when I had 4 hard counters in my hand, which is pretty goddamn embarrassing. I mean, ultimately, I guess I can be content in the idea that I had managed to pull this game out despite the triple mulligan, and by all rights had won the game. I just simply rewind the Fall of the Titans. Amnesia resolves, takes the Mysloth out of his hand, and then he's just completely dead in the water. And winning from there would be trivial. Unfortunately, I let it resolve, and he killed me. So, yeah, I lost this game by not reading the card adequately. But at least you guys got to enjoy the thought process that went into sculpting this presumed victory up until the very, very last second when I managed to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. And, yeah, sometimes you just misread cards and make mistakes. But I hope the game was entertaining to watch. And first game I posted in a long time. And I've got one more to record, I think, in this archive that should be entertaining. Look for that pretty soon. Glad to be back. See you guys later.